What happens when a neighbor tries to fine a man for his own property without even suspecting who actually owns her yard? What happened next turned the whole neighborhood upside down and left the HOA council completely silent. It started with strawberries. That's right. One sunny morning in May, I was standing by my raised garden bed wearing my old army tee and shaking a crate of sweet, red strawberries like I was offering gold to the gods. I'd spent the last 3 weeks coaxing those berries out of the soil like they were shy toddlers. And now? Now they looked like something straight out of a Southern cookbook cover. You could almost hear them whisper, "Put me in a pie." I wasn't picking these for me. No, sir. I had something softer in mind. Across the road lived Miss Dell, short for Della Washington, 80 years old, wore the same pink sun hat since I moved here, and walked like she still had somewhere to be. Ever since my wife Rachel and I bought this plot of land in Elmridge, Miss Dell had been nothing but sweet to us. She brought us peach cobbler our first Sunday and scolded me 2 weeks later for not trimming my hedges straight. That's love in this neighborhood. So, I grabbed a basket, filled it to the brim with the best berries I had, and walked across the street to her door like some backyard Santa Claus. I left the basket by the door, knocked gently, and turned to walk away. Then I saw it. A sign. Nailed right onto her white mailbox like it belonged there all along. Private HOA property. Trespassers will be reported. Now hold up. HOA? Ain't nobody said nothin' about no HOA when we bought our land. Rachel and I made sure of it. We ain't the kind of folks to pay folks to tell us how tall our grass should be. That was the whole reason we bought a place on the edge of town, trees, bees, and a whole lot of peace. Ain't no mention of an HOA when I signed those closing papers. None. So I did what any man with a raised eyebrow and a working phone would do. I took a picture. The next morning, Trouble showed up wearing a blazer and a smirk. Her name was Karen. I kid you not. Real name. I saw it printed right on her badge. Karen Warburton, interim HOA director. She looked like she ironed her attitude that morning. She showed up at my property like she owned the air I was breathing. You left produce on HOA grounds, she snapped. That's a code violation. I blinked. You mean the strawberries? She pulled out a yellow slip like she was auditioning for Judge Judy. Unauthorized placement of goods on HOA landscape. That's a $50 fine. Ma'am, I said, calm as a preacher, that was a gift for Miss Delegate. Ain't nobody selling strawberries out here. Intent doesn't change the infraction, she said. You'll need to remove any further produce immediately. And just like that, she strutted off my gravel driveway in her stiff little kitten heels, leaving tire tracks of ridiculous behind her. I looked down at that yellow slip and let out a breath through my nose. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a sigh. Just that sound a man makes when he realizes the next few weeks of his life just got real complicated. And that was only the beginning. Later that week, I noticed something strange, a fresh metal post driven into the corner of my front yard, right by the mailbox. It had a cheap-looking sign with the words HOA violator under review printed on it like I was a delinquent school kid or some neighborhood criminal. I stood there staring at it, holding my mail like a man holds a pie he didn't order. Now listen, I've done 2 tours overseas. I've dealt with things that'd freeze the spine of most folks. But nothing, and I mean nothing, makes a man's blood boil like some smug neighbor thinking they own your land more than you do. Rachel stepped out and saw the sign. She paused, read it, and gave me that look, you know, the one your spouse gives when they know you're about to raise hell but they also kind of want to help. I'm Callan, the county, she said, pulling out her phone. She was already on speaker with zoning and property enforcement within minutes. I grabbed a shovel and yanked that sign out the ground like pulling a rotten tooth. A week later, I got a second violation for removal of HOA property. Same yellow slip, new level of foolishness. Now here's the kicker, we weren't even in their HOA. Not legally. Not geographically. Not spiritually. We were the last lot on the edge of the development, our deed crystal clear, not subject to HOA. But Karen? Karen had other ideas. She'd gotten herself elected as interim president of the HOA board after the last one retired. Word around the block was she wasn't elected so much as nobody else showed up. That didn't stop her from printing out business cards, though. She started calling in compliance officers, basically 2 underpaid guys in orange vests and attitude problems who would march around my yard with clipboards measuring my shed, tapping the soil around my chicken coop, and once, I swear, sniffing the compost bin. You got livestock? One of them asked. They're chickens. That counts. Only in Karenland, I muttered. You'll need a permit, he said, not looking up from his clipboard. For what? Chicken personalities? I called my lawyer and he confirmed, no HOA, no jurisdiction, no power. But they were banking on one thing: if they buried me in paperwork and made enough noise, I'd fold just to get peace. Wrong man, wrong decade. The final straw came 2 weeks later when I woke up to the sound of arguing outside. Rachel was already on the porch, barefoot, in her robe, phone in hand. Across the road, 2 compliance officers were digging a trench on our side of the property line. "What is this?" I asked, stepping outside. "Drainage inspection," one of them barked. "On my land?" "HOA complaint. Soil runoff into communal property." "Y'all better step back before I file a complaint of my own," Rachel said, waving her phone. The guy closest to her took one step too far and knocked over one of her planters, the ceramic one her father made. It shattered on the gravel. Rachel went silent. And that, folks, was scarier than any yell. I looked at that broken pot, then at the 2 men holding shovels like they were waiting on backup. I looked over at Karen, standing on her porch, arms folded, sipping coffee like she was enjoying a morning show. I didn't say a word. I just walked inside. That night, I sat with the deed to my land, every survey map, and a county GIS app open on my laptop. And I found something. Something interesting. Something quiet. I didn't tell Rachel. Not yet. I needed to be sure. What happened next changed everything. And I mean everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds because the fight has only just begun. You ever get that feeling like you're being watched even when nothing's moving? That was me 2 weeks after the whole drainage inspection circus on my lawn. I swear I couldn't so much as water my tomatoes without seeing some pair of HOA binoculars glinting through the trees. Karen had turned passive aggression into a spectator sport. She wasn't just watching, she was hunting. Now, I hadn't told Rachel about what I found on those county maps. Not yet. I needed time. Needed to talk to a surveyor, double-check the property lines. Because if what I saw was real, then all this noise Karen was making, it wasn't just illegal. It was laughable. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The morning after the shattered planter incident, I got another yellow slip. This one said violation, unauthorized structure. You'd think I was putting up a water park. It was my shed. My shed. The same one I'd had up since the day we moved in, before Karen even knew how to spell HOA director. According to her, it was visible from the road and constructed without pre-approved materials. I guess what wasn't fancy enough. Rachel laughed out loud when she read it. "What next?" she said. "Gonna fine us for having a mailbox that isn't mahogany?" "Careful," I said. "She might hear you." We were half joking. But not really. By week's end, we had 5 fines pinned to our front door with pink HOA tape like some kind of shame parade. Rachel said it felt like we were being evicted by stickers. Every morning we'd walk out and there'd be a new one. Weeds too tall, tools visible from driveway, lawn ornaments in excess of 3. I didn't even own lawn ornaments. But I had one rusty rooster that had been in Rachel's family since her grandmother's garden. Now he was considered contraband. "Guess Big Rooster's a gang symbol now," I muttered, tossing another fine in the kitchen drawer we'd started calling the Karen file. Now here's where it got personal. One afternoon I pulled into the driveway to find a man on our property. Not near it. On it. Full khakis, clipboard, measuring wheel in hand. I parked, stepped out, and cleared my throat. "You lost." He didn't even flinch. "HOA boundary verification." "Routine." "Routine?" I said. "Funny. Routine for who?" "For the association," he replied, like I was supposed to clap. "You got ID?" He flashed a card that looked like it was printed on a home computer. "HOA field compliance, third party." "Third party to what?" "The circus." "Sir, I'm just doing my job." "Yeah? Well, your job's gonna take you right off this land unless you show me something from the county. This ain't HOA territory." He shrugged and walked off, but not before wheeling that tape measure across my entire yard like he was drawing up plans for a takeover. Rachel came out after he left, eyes tight. "That the same guy who took pictures of our fence last week?" "Yep." I'd had enough. That night, I called in a licensed surveyor, a real one, and paid him to come mark the property. Turns out, not only was our land 100% outside the HOA, but that community garden Karen had been so proud of, the one she hosted her little wine nights in, the edge of it ran right onto my legal acreage. That's when the idea hit me. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to fight smart. But see, here's the problem with playing smart in a world full of dumb. You gotta move quiet, like a chess game with neighbors who think checkers is the height of strategy. While I waited on legal advice, Karen didn't let up. One morning, we woke up to find orange cones in our driveway and a laminated sign that read, "Pending easement." Access required. I laughed so hard I nearly pulled something. She was claiming our driveway was now a shared access point. I pulled out my lawn chair, set it right next to the cone, and drank sweet tea for 3 hours straight while I stared at every car that slowed down. Rachel said I looked like a retired security guard auditioning for reality TV. That same week, someone filed a complaint about suspicious noises coming from our tool shed. Know what it was? A busted wind chime that had tangled in the rafters. Meanwhile, Miss Dell had stopped receiving her Meals on Wheels deliveries. Why? Because someone called them and claimed her address was inaccessible due to construction. Now, you tell me what kind of human being blocks a senior's food delivery just to prove a point. That's when Rachel said it. This isn't just petty anymore. This is targeted. She was right. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on my old boots, the ones with dust from my last base in Georgia still in the creases. I took a walk, not just down the road. No, I walked every inch of our boundary line, marked it with biodegradable paint, flagged every corner, double-checked it against the GIS data, and took photos with timestamps. I sent the packet to the county with a formal complaint. And then, I waited, because sometimes when the fire's hot, you don't blow on it. You let it spread. And Karen? Oh, she was about to learn that when you mess with someone's land, especially a veteran with a toolbox and a long fuse, you'd better hope that fuse stays dry. But just when I thought we'd hit peak foolishness, Karen showed her true colors. She called a mandatory HOA perimeter inspection and invited all the board members. They came lawn chairs, clipboards, and snacks, and sat on the edge of our ditch like it was the Super Bowl. One lady even brought binoculars. I stepped out onto my porch like it was high noon in a Western. "You got business here?" I called. Karen stood up, smug as a raccoon in a chicken coop. "This is an HOA event. You're welcome to observe." "Observe what?" She pointed at my compost bin, of all things. "That is considered offensive debris under HOA Clause 3D. "Offensive?" I said. "Ma'am, that's banana peels and eggshells. Not a protest banner." She didn't laugh. She just handed me another yellow slip. Her personal signature at the bottom. I didn't rip it. I didn't cuss. I didn't even blink. I just nodded and walked back inside. I had everything I needed now. I had maps. I had timestamps. I had evidence. And I had patience. See, people like Karen? They don't expect you to do your homework. They expect you to fold. But I had just gotten started. This is it. Everything's about to flip. You waited for it, now the moment's here. Don't miss what happens next. Because it changes everything. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels like a string pulled tight. That's the kind of silence I was living in by the time August rolled around. No new fines. No new cones. No men in khakis stomping through my marigolds. Just quiet. Too quiet. But silence from Karen? That wasn't relief. That was pressure. That was the eye of the storm. And I knew, deep down, the kind of knowing that sits behind your eyes and hums in your spine, that she was up to something. I wasn't wrong. It happened on a Thursday morning. I stepped out onto the porch with my coffee, expecting a breeze and maybe the smell of pine. Instead, I found a bright red sign staked into my lawn. HOA Enforcement Notice. Property subject to lien. I stared at that sign like it had slapped me. Lien? On my land? Rachel came out behind me. She didn't say a word. Just stood there, jaw locked. "Tell me this is a prank," I muttered. But it wasn't. Attached to our door. Yep, pink tape again. Was a thick envelope marked urgent. Inside was a packet of legal gibberish claiming we owed over $3,200 in accumulated violation fines, and that the HOA had initiated lien proceedings through their attorney. Their attorney. Now, I've seen some things. Been through systems that chew people up. But the idea that a group of glorified garden club members thought they could take my land? That lit something in me. First call I made was to the county clerk. Not the HOA's lawyer. Not the sheriff. The clerk. I need a record check on parcels 17B through 21D in Elmridge. And I need it certified. Took a few days, but when that file came through, everything clicked into place. Turns out, not only did our property sit outside the HOA boundary, but 5 years ago, when the original HOA charter expired and was never properly renewed, certain buffer parcels, land meant to stay undeveloped between members and private owners, had been auctioned by the county due to unpaid back taxes. Guess who bought one? That's right. 3 years ago, before we ever moved in, during a bundle sale of forested lots, I'd acquired, unintentionally, a narrow half-acre that ran behind Karen's backyard like a shadow. Her beloved fire pit? Her outdoor yoga zone? Her community event pergola? All built on my land. And I had the deed to prove it. I sat in the kitchen staring at that paper, blinking slow. Rachel leaned over my shoulder. Is that what I think it is? Oh yeah. And just like that, all that frustration, all those fines, all that marching around with clipboards and smug little rules, it collapsed under its own arrogance. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did I walk over there waving the deed around like a flag at a parade? No. That would have been too easy. I called a meeting. An official HOA meeting. I requested a seat at the next open board session per HOA Clause 6A. Any adjacent property owner with direct impact on community planning may request a 10-minute forum. They had to let me in. And they did. Oh boy, they did. The night of the meeting, I showed up with a manila folder, a printed map, and a calm smile. Karen was already at the head of the table, flanked by 4 board members, 2 of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Marshall, she said, we hope you're here to resolve your outstanding violations. I'm here to discuss land rights, I replied, setting the folder down. Her expression froze for a half-second. Excuse me. I opened the folder. Spread out the deed. The county survey, the tax record, the GIS printout, all color-coded. The land you've been using for communal events? It's mine. I let that hang there. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Or a ceramic rooster fall. Finally, Karen tried to speak. That area is part of the community buffer. Nope, I said. Not since 2020. Auctioned. Bought. Registered. I slid a copy across the table. See the stamp? That's the county seal. You're welcome to verify it. And then I stood up. Any use of that land moving forward will require written permission, including HOA events, including your so-called lien enforcement sign, which, by the way, is sitting on private property. One of the board members cleared his throat. So, you're fining us? I smiled. Not yet. And then I left. By the following weekend, Karen had called an emergency HOA session. She didn't invite me. But word spreads fast when folks are nervous. Turns out, a few of the other board members had started digging into the documents I'd provided, and they weren't liking what they saw. Not just because of the land, but because Karen had been acting on behalf of the HOA without proper votes, overstepping her powers. See, some folks on that board? They just liked feeling important. But when they realized Karen's drama could cost them real money, they backed up like a cat from a sprinkler. The next day, I got a visit. A knock on the door, not the clipboard kind. The polite, we're sorry kind. It was Roger, one of the HOA's more level-headed board members. He came with a folder and a handshake. Mr. Marshall, he said, we'd like to resolve things quietly. I invited him in, gave him a sweet tea, listened. They wanted to redefine the community boundary, remove my property from their map entirely. No more fines, no more inspections, no lien. I asked for that in writing. He said yes. I told him one more thing, the sign in my yard still had to come down. By sunset. He said he'd handle it personally. And he did. I watched from the porch that evening as Roger, suit and all, bent over and yanked that bright red lien notice sign out of my grass. He didn't say a word. Just nodded at me. Walked it to his car. Drove off. Rachel leaned against the doorframe behind me. Well, she said. That was satisfying. Better than pie, I said. And I meant it. But Karen? She wasn't done. Not yet. Because when someone's used to power, even fake power, they don't go quietly. And the next thing she did? Well, let's just say it pushed this little neighborhood dispute into something a whole lot bigger. Everything just flipped, but it's far from over. You won't believe what Karen does next. Stick around, because this story's about to hit a whole new level. I should have known she wouldn't let it go. After everything, the maps, the meeting, the sign being pulled out by one of her own board members, you'd think Karen would have taken the L, packed her laminated HOA rulebook, and gone home. But no. That would have required humility. And humility was not in Karen Warburton's vocabulary. 2 weeks of calm passed, almost like the neighborhood was breathing again. No new fines. No pop-up inspections. I got so comfortable I started rebuilding Rachel's planter box and even strung up some new solar lights along the edge of the driveway. Things felt normal again. Until they didn't. It started subtle, the kind of subtle you only notice when you've been through enough mess to smell it from a mile away. Rachel's mail started showing up opened. Miss Dell told us someone called her claiming we were operating an unlicensed nursery. Then, one morning, I got a visit from a county assessor asking if we were running a commercial gardening operation out of our home. "What gave you that idea?" I asked. He looked awkward. "Anonymous tip." Of course it was. But what came next? That wasn't subtle. That was front-page dramatic. It was a Sunday afternoon. Rachel and I had just finished grilling out back, ribs, corn, everything smelling like home. We were sitting on the porch, laughing about how we should have invited the neighbors just to spite Karen when we heard it. Sirens. Not one. Not two. 3 county vehicles pulled up like it was a sting operation. Code enforcement. Fire inspection. Even someone from the zoning board. "Mr. Marshall," one of them called out, clipboard in hand. "We received a report of unauthorized construction on your property. Complaints about fire hazards, unregulated gatherings, and improperly installed utilities." I blinked. "What exactly are you talking about?" He pointed, not at my house. Not at my shed. At the far back lot. The land I'd owned for 3 years. The one Karen had built her pergola on. Only, the pergola was gone. Burned. Down. Nothing but scorched beams and a twisted metal lantern left standing. "You're saying I built that?" I asked. The officer flipped through his folder. "We were told you recently erected a structure, hosted a gathering, and caused a small fire that spread to the buffer zone." "I didn't build anything," I said slowly. "That was already there. On land that used to be listed under HOA. But it's mine now. Been mine." Rachel stepped in, holding up her phone. "We've got time-stamped photos from 3 weeks ago. Show it fully intact, before your HOA ever admitted it was on our parcel." The officers weren't hostile. Just confused. Overwhelmed. It was clear they'd been fed a story and it didn't hold up under daylight. We gave statements. Showed documentation. And they left. But not before warning us that a full investigation might follow. Because someone had reported us as repeat violators with a history of noncompliance. Karen's fingerprints were all over it. That night, Rachel and I sat on the porch and watched the sun dip behind the trees. "You think she burned it herself?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But I knew this, she'd rather see it in flames than admit it wasn't hers. That kind of pride? It's dangerous. The following week, the county opened an inquiry. This time, it wasn't about us. It was about her. Karen had pushed too far, too often, and on too many people. I wasn't the only one. Turns out she'd been issuing fines on properties she didn't control, altering meeting records, and using HOA funds for beautification projects on her own front lawn. The HOA board collapsed faster than a card table in a thunderstorm. One by one, members resigned, some publicly, others quietly. A formal hearing was scheduled at the county hall to review her conduct as a community representative. And yes, I was invited to testify. I showed up that day in a navy jacket and jeans. Rachel told me I looked like a man on a mission. I felt like one. Karen sat at the far end of the room, back stiff, hair tight, lips thinner than usual. She didn't look at me once. I spoke calmly. I laid out the harassment, the lies, the false reports, the fines, the trespassing, the misuse of power. I handed them a folder. Maps. Emails. Photos. Witness statements from neighbors, including Miss Dell. It was thorough. Too thorough for even Karen's theatrics. By the end of the session, the county voted unanimously she was to be stripped of all HOA authority, barred from issuing or participating in any code enforcement complaints, and required to issue a formal retraction of her previous lien notice. They didn't fine her. But I didn't need them to. Because the fallout? That was the real justice. Neighbors who once kept their heads down started talking. "The woman across the street," said Karen, once fined her for hanging wind chimes. "The guy 2 doors down," said Karen, tried to get his deck repainted because it clashed with her shutters. People were tired. And once the fear was gone, so was her control. Her house, the one that always looked like a magazine cover, turned quiet. No more wine nights. No more compliance walks. Just silence. The kind that doesn't mean peace. The kind that means isolation. As for us, Rachel got her planter box finished. I got my solar lights. Big Rooster stayed right where he was, proud and rusty. The county dropped any mention of investigation. Official letters confirmed our land's independence. We even got a letter of apology from the zoning board, along with a $100 voucher for the local nursery, which Rachel called reparations for ridiculousness. One afternoon, I got a knock on the door. It was Miss Delaware. She held out a pie, peach of course, and smiled. "You earned this," she said. "I've lived here 40 years. Ain't never seen someone stand up like that. Just did what had to be done," I said. "No," she replied. "You did what we all wanted to do. You just had the guts." Sometimes people think a fight's about pride. But for me, this wasn't pride. This was about peace. Peace in your own home. Peace on your own land. The kind of peace that don't need approval from some clipboard queen in kitten heels. Karen tried to turn my life into a spreadsheet. She wanted control, and she got none. What she didn't realize is, when you mess with someone's home, you don't just pick a fight. You pick a legacy, and some legacies fight back.